impressed with everything that I'd learned. Learned about the project here, the club, the creation of the club, starting from the owners of the club, the Taylor family, Jack Taylor Enterprise, just, every single step of the journey. You start researching, you start speaking to people, asking questions. And there were so many moments where I was just, getting off a phone call or getting off an interview and thinking, wow, that was a lot more interesting than I knew of. And there's so many things going for this project with the ownership, as I said. Of course, the infrastructure that's been built is amazing. Here we are overlooking City Park, which is one of the most beautiful stadiums I can imagine. The training ground, of course, the brand, the excitement of the fan base. There's so many things that are unique about this, and of course the fact that it's a brand new club.
Welcome to a new edition of the City Voice podcast. I am joined by another very, very special guest, Diego Gigliani, President of St. Louis City SC. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Pete, very much. You pronounced my last name perfectly.
I'm so glad. I was a bit of panic in the system there.
Very nice to be here and finally be a participant in one of these rather than just a listener of one of these.
So glad you listened. I hope you gave a little 5-star review.
Absolutely.
That's what I like to hear. Great. We're going to cover, you've got a really interesting career and backstory. Want to find out a little bit about where you grew up. The people of St. Louis love those stories. But we get into the super serious part of the podcast. This is called the fun round, and I'm going to ask you some questions, only honest answers. The internet will know if you deviate. Tea or coffee? Coffee. All that time in England, and they couldn't convert you.
I could never get close to a tea with milk. Impossible. Tea, I could do. But tea with milk, never managed to get into it. But coffee would be my preference.
How do you have your coffee?
Cappuccino. Skim milk.
Did you have a favorite place in Manchester?
There was a favorite place that was close to where we lived in Didsbury, Manchester. Yeah. Great, nice, local, independent place where we'd love to go for coffee.
Fantastic. Which soccer team do you support that is not St. Louis City SC?
Argentina national team.
Yeah?
Yeah. You're trying to get me to pick a club?
I was trying to get you to pick a club, yeah. I was trying to get some salaciousness in there.
I would say Man City. It would have to be Man City.
Good, yeah. Well, that hurts as an Arsenal fan. What is your favorite productivity app?
Teams. Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams, okay.
I think since COVID, that's just taken over, it took over my life for several years.
Most listened to artist of 2023 so far?
Probably Coldplay.
Coldplay?
Yeah. Went
nice.
to a couple of their concerts and getting ready for it, listened to it a lot.
Fantastic. Secret skill people do not know about?
Good amount of people know about it now, but I play the piano. I've played the piano since I was 10 or 11 years old. I don't play very often. Obviously, not something that you show very often. But yeah, I play the piano. I played a little bit of guitar too.
What sort of piano? Are you a classical guy, or are you like?
What I mostly like doing is to improvise around chords to songs that I like to listen to. So no, not really a classical guy. Did some classical training and some jazz piano playing, but since I don't play very often, you kind of lose that skill a little bit. What I like to do is just kind of sit down on an evening and find some chords to songs that I like, and I just improvise around them and enjoy the songs.
That is a good skill. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Are you going to get a dog in St. Louis?
Hope not.
No.
But the kids, they're the bosses, so you're never quite sure.
Running or cycling?
Running.
You a big runner?
I wouldn't call myself a big runner. A big runner has certain standards that you'd have to meet to be called a big runner. But I've done a few half marathons, one triathlon, but never done a marathon before. And if you're going to call yourself a big runner, you have to have done at least one, probably several, maybe even an Ironman. No?
Oh, that's true. That's true. Favorite possession that is also a flex?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but a recent one would be when I left City Football Group. I was given a great farewell gift, which was a framed signed Man City shirt next to a Argentina shirt with my name on it. So that felt very, very nice as a farewell gift. that also shows that they know me well and wanted to appreciate the time spent there.
Oh, that's great. And best player you've ever seen that is not Messi or Cristiano?
Maradona.
You saw Maradona?
Yeah. In fact, I was at the game where Maradona was taken off the pitch after the game in the 1994 World Cup in the U.S. I think it was Argentina. I don't remember if it was Greece or Nigeria. I think it was Nigeria, where he then tested positive and was banned from the rest of the World Cup. So yeah, I saw that game, and seen him on TV a million times, and was an introduction to football for me.
That's fantastic. Maybe not the what happened after. Diego, it is great to have you on the show. You're finally here. Have you moved over with your family? Is everybody here with you now?
Yeah, everyone's here with me now. The family, my wife and the kids moved over this last weekend. I arrived on July 4th, very symbolic arrival on U.S. Independence Day. I was landing, it was probably maybe 9 or 10 p.m. and literally outside the window of the airplane, there were fireworks going off all over the city.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really nice way to arrive, and it's nice to be back because I did live in the U.S. for probably over 15 years in my life, but it has been 10 years since I've lived here last. So it's nice to be back, and it's also nice to arrive at this club, at this city, and of course to have a family here.
You exited your old job on one of the biggest highs that are possible in soccer. What was that like for you with Manchester City for a long time?
Yeah, it was an incredible way to leave, really. I mean, so happy and so lucky to have been able to leave after that huge milestone. No, at the end, it wasn't just winning the Champions League, the first Champions League in the club's history, but also winning the treble. And it just felt like this great culmination of so many people's dedication and hard work. Going from the owners all the way to every single member of staff, of course, players. And it just felt like a really symbolic moment that captured the 10 years that I was at that organization in a really unforgettable moment where everyone is just feeling over the moon and everyone is using those moments to reflect. No? And you think back at everything that we've been through and the journey that the club and the people have gone through, and it was such a beautiful moment to be a part of.
Did you get the chance to go to see the Champions League final?
I did. I was there.
Did you enjoy it, or was it like, oh, this is painful?
Yeah, I think like many Man City fans, I think we were hoping that the game was going to be more in our favor and more under control, but it wasn't, as many finals are. So there were definitely a lot of moments of nervousness during the game. Even up to the very end, despite having that one goal advantage. So yeah, the game was I would say a little bit less fun than I was hoping it was going to be, but the ending was amazing, and of course the celebrations afterwards were unique. And I even had the chance to be at the game with my wife and the kids, and super grateful for that opportunity, and what they will take with them for the rest of their lives will be with them. No, it's a pretty incredible moment to have been able to live together.
So I'm going to hit you with a big question, nice and early. You've probably got the choice of going to a lot of places. Why did you choose to come to St. Louis City SC to continue your career and journey in soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of your listeners and you will probably be best placed to understand why, because you know the reality of what's being done here and what you guys have built up to today. I think the interesting part is for all those that don't know about it and maybe are asking themselves that question and say, wait a second, you were at City Football Group, working at Man City and all these other clubs, winning Champions Leagues. And all of a sudden you're going to St. Louis City. What's in St. Louis, no? But I think that's one of the main reasons why I am here, because when I did start looking into the project and learning about it, every single step of the way, I was just impressed with everything that I'd learned. Learned about the project here, the club, the creation of the club, starting from the owners of the club, the Taylor family, Jack Taylor Enterprise, just every single step of the journey, you start researching, you start speaking to people, asking questions. And there were so many moments where I was just getting off a phone call or getting off an interview and thinking, wow, that was a lot more interesting than I knew of. And there's so many things going for this project with the ownership, as I said. Of course, the infrastructure that's been built is amazing. Here we are overlooking City Park, which is one of the most beautiful stadiums I can imagine. The training ground, of course, the brand, the excitement of the fan base. There's so many things that are unique about this, and of course, the fact that it's a brand new club. But on top of that, which is kind of the core things around the club that made it interesting, there's also this broader context of the U.S. market, the time. The U.S. market is the largest sports market in the world. Soccer or football, as I refer to it, I'm sure 100 times during the podcast.
I'm still there. We can call it football today.
All right.
No one can stop us.
Good. No beeping when I say football all the times. But yeah, you can see how football in the U.S. isn't one of the biggest sports, but is consistently growing, and has got so many huge international competitions coming up here in the U.S. Obviously, Copa America, and now the Club World Cup, the FIFA World Cup, and it feels like this is a really special moment in time for the sport here in the U.S. So that's also been an important factor in choosing to come. And then lastly, I would say on the personal side, it's getting to know the city, because at the end, it's a very personal decision as well of moving yourself and your family to spend every day in a completely new city. You've had to go through that decision yourself, also coming from Europe. And again, I didn't know a lot about St. Louis before starting on this journey, but you come visit it, you speak to people that are either from here or people that weren't from here but spent time here, and everything that I heard was really consistent. It is an amazing city to live in, especially great for kids. So all those things came together, and it felt like this was the right opportunity.
What does the process look like for you getting to know the club and the club getting to know you? Does like one person make a phone call to you? Like, is it a long interview process? Like, how do these things happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, these processes take many months. In this case, it started with an executive search firm that contacted me. Obviously, Carolyn, Jason, and Lee had identified what they needed, and that executive search firm would have brought many different candidates to them. And then I had the chance to introduce myself and explain a little bit about my background. And then it's just, several different, at that point, most of them were video-based conversations. Obviously, I was based in the UK. And then as the process progressed on both of our sides, from the club side being interested and from my side as well, we decided to then meet in person. And I flew over here to St. Louis, spent some time with them and also with more people, especially around the ownership group. And I got to see all this with my own eyes. I got to see the stadium, I got to see the training ground, I got to see the city, understand areas to live in, schools, and come back home with a much more well-rounded idea of what this could be like.
You've got some experience of MLS already. Like you understand the market. Is there anything in particular that excites you about it? Like, is there something brewing? I mean, obviously you were here in 1994 for the World Cup when there was an expectation things would bang. We're back here again 2 years out or 3 years out. What's different and what's exciting about the MLS right in this moment that would encourage you to move all the way from Manchester to here? Yeah,
I would say one of the, I'd say there's many different things that make it exciting. I think there's some of the usual things that have been exciting for a long time, which is the potential of the market and for football to really crack it here. But I think there are some more specific data points over the last several years that make this a bit more interesting than other times. I think the experience at City Football Group with Man City, especially in my first several years with the group, the focus on the U.S. market and the popularity of the Premier League in the U.S. really took off in the last 10 years since I've been working at City Football Group, especially with the new NBC rights, new at the time, NBC rights deal. Yeah. There was just a lot more people watching football here. And there was already people watching the national team, the men's national team. Of course, the women's national team was one of the most successful national teams in the world. But, European football started being watched more and more. The Premier League, of course, La Liga games, Champions League games, But then you go further and you see that the most watched football here is actually the Liga MX. And MLS has been growing consistently over all this time because more interest in football. Then people want to consume football locally and go to a football game. And they've got MLS teams in more cities now than they've ever had before. So I think all of that has grown in the last 10 years. And then when you look specifically at the MLS, you see many more teams than there were obviously 10 years. And you see a lot of ownership groups that are really putting serious bets on football, changing dramatically in terms of its appeal in the US, and investing in infrastructure, investing in talent, investing in operations of the team, even things like this, just taking the sport really seriously with a desire to make it one of the biggest sports in the country. So all of that then creates this amazing fan culture that you see in the stadiums, with so many different stadiums really coming to life with kind of organic traditions, and of course a lot of pride from all those different cities. And all that then creates this environment where players want to start coming here. And that I saw a lot, especially in my latest role at City Football Group, where we were speaking to talent that could have been considering options between some of our non-Man City Football Group clubs and US MLS clubs, and speaking to players or agents where MLS clubs had a lot of appeal. So you could just start seeing all these different things adding up, and then you bring Apple into the equation, Messi, World Cup, and there's just so much about the MLS now that feels like a really exciting place to be.
So do you feel like those the foundations are strengthening? There's better talent coming into the league. You've got Adidas, you've got Apple, and then the 2026 World Cup is coming into town. Do you is it too simplistic to say that could be a real moment? Is that or do you personally feel that as a big World Cup fan yourself? I mean, you go to World Cups, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've actually been to every World Cup since 1994, except for one. Always with my father and some other members of the family joining in at times. So yeah, they're a really special part of my life and my memories. But I think looking at it from the perspective of the business of the sport and the appeal of the sport, I think it's unquestionable that with every World Cup, the interest in the sport in the U.S. has grown. Even World Cups where the U.S. hasn't competed. I think actually Americans are the fans that most travel to World Cups every time, for every 4 years.
Wow.
So that always will drive more interest in the sport. But then on top of that, having it in the U.S. just makes it that much more exciting. And obviously there's been one time where it's been in the U.S. before, but that's been nearly 30 years ago. No? So I think this comes at a moment where football is already a lot more popular, and this has the potential to just once again create a step change in the popularity of the sport. I would also say one thing, Pete. While there are so many things going for the sport here, and they make it appealing to come, I think what's also really interesting is that we also have so much room to improve. No, I mean, from following football when you were born and in the UK, how important of a sport it is nationally for the people that live there, for the communities, obviously for audiences and TV. And we have to recognize that football here in the U.S. is not that. No, it's not the NFL. It's not the NBA. As a business, TV rights are still far lower than what they are in lots of other large, well-established sports leagues around the world. Wages, we aren't able to compete with the big five leagues in Europe. And there are still many players that when given the option of I wouldn't even say Premier League team, but you say La Liga team, Ligue 1 in France, Serie A, that still seems like a higher quality league, more prestigious, that they want to go play in above the MLS. So I think if everything was going for the MLS, but the room to grow wasn't there, that also wouldn't be as interesting. But it's in this point where there's a lot going for it, and there's still so much more that we can do to improve. And I think that's that space where we're in now.
And it's also important to note for MLS fans that maybe haven't paid attention to the Premier League for 30 years, but the Premier League 30 years ago was not what it is now. And it was maybe fourth or fifth best league in Europe. If that, the technical level wasn't there, the investment wasn't there, the fandom was. And then it improved, and like the difference in the Premier League from when you started at Manchester City to where it is now. I mean, do you think that did you see growth in that 10-year period?
For sure. I think I'd say the Premier League was still the number one most watched league. It is true that its level of leadership in the space would have been tighter with La Liga, or even Serie A many years ago was the most
Really
watched, most watched league in global football. But its international appeal, especially in Asia, has always been very strong. And I think what did happen is that Real Madrid and Barcelona are obviously two huge football clubs that have always been able to attract or create some of the best football players in the world. And they have always been able to grab a lot of attention. And I think several different things happening at the same time. Of course, Messi and Ronaldo being great ambassadors for the sport and some of the best players to ever play. They create a lot of attention around those two clubs. But this is where you then have to look at the league as a whole. And are you actually creating interested fans in the league and in more other than just two clubs? And I think the Premier League has been able to do a fantastic job of that, of creating a very competitive league where any single match day, almost any team can beat any other team. So that makes it more interesting as a fan, and that's been able to help create this huge appeal for the league all over the world.
Great. So I'd love, before we get into the meat of the podcast, for you to tell us what your job role is and to give us your view of what the job is in your own words.
Yeah, I mean, the job that I'm here to do is to help St. Louis City, first of all, to realize the vision of the owners. And the vision of the owners is for this club to represent the city very well and to be about more than just soccer, or more than the sport itself, and to transcend a little bit of help the community to regenerate in this area here in downtown West where we are. Of course, to connect with fans and engage people locally, to uphold values that matter to the people of the city. So, my role is here to help operationalize the club towards that vision. What I'd love to do is to bring that experience of having worked in football clubs for the last 10 years to see how I can complement what ownership, of course, knows around the city and how to help connect with that city with what I can bring around how to manage a football club. From the sporting side to the business side, that experience of having done that over the last 10 years with 10, 11 football clubs, hopefully can add value here for the club.
You excited?
Super excited. Very energized.
Fantastic. All right, let's go right the way back. I'd love to hear about your story growing up. Like, where did you grow up and what was it like being a young person?
Yeah, so I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but I actually left there when I was 3 years old the first time. My young life was the son of an expat father who worked for a multinational company, which implied that every 3 or 4 years, our family would pick up and we would move. And that was the life I lived until I was old enough to make some of my own decisions. And then curiously, I kind of continued living that life because that's what you're used to and that's where you feel comfortable. So, I was born in Argentina, but I actually spent fewer years living in Argentina than I have living in Spain, the UK, or the US, which is actually the country where I've spent the most number of years in my life.
Which part of the US did you live in, or which parts?
Yeah, I've lived in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Miami. So always East Coast. This is my first opportunity in the Midwest.
Fantastic. You mentioned earlier that you go to the World Cup games with your dad. Was it your dad who introduced you to the beautiful game?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was, being from Argentina, football is part of everyone's life. Of course, living in Argentina means that you get to watch games and go to games much more often. When I was 3 and we came to the US, it wasn't an important part of my life then. But this next time I went back to Argentina was right when it was the 1986 World Cup. I was 10 years old. In Argentina, that was the prime of Diego Maradona. and they got to the final and they won that competition. The memories that I have of that moment were amazing, because I was a young kid that all of a sudden got put in the back of a pickup truck, and we went around the city and the streets of Buenos Aires, hearing all the drums beating and people singing songs, celebrating that huge moment for the country. And that's what really got me very hooked on watching the sport.
Is soccer and family the key ingredient there for you? Like, is that your experience of football and the memories that you have, that you mentioned being with your family for the Champions League final, like your dad at the World Cups, like is that what really draws you to the game, and does that sort of drive how you think about football as a business?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure. I mean, I think that football is definitely one of the most important parts of my life, because of the moments of bonding and the memories that creates, the wins and the losses. Of course, prefer the wins, but the losses also.
Did you play?
I played recreationally for fun with friends. Never at a competitive level, never kind of seriously, but I always enjoyed playing.
Did you ever dabble in other sports, like particularly when you were in America? You baseball, or you?
Yeah, I played a little bit of basketball because I was always a little bit taller than others in my class, but not too seriously. And in the season, in the fall season, I would play football instead of American football.
Yeah.
Sorry, soccer instead of football in that season. Then the winter I would do skiing, and then the spring I would play tennis, which is an American sport per se. So yeah, I think American sports, it was mostly just basketball with friends.
You studied at a very prestigious place at Wharton. Did you have sport on the mind when you went there to study?
Not at all, actually. Not at all. I mean, I would say that back then, this was now almost 20 years ago when I finished business school at Wharton. A career in sport wasn't really, I would say it's probably not even a traditional career path today, but it wasn't even few people work in sports when they graduate from Wharton 20 years ago. It really wasn't a serious career. Maybe in the US a little more, but definitely not outside of there. I would say that I always had this interest in media and entertainment and kind of creative industries. Music obviously was always an established industry per se, and I've always loved music, as I described before, playing piano. So there were parts of me that would have loved to have worked in media and entertainment or music. I remember I did a class on that, which I enjoyed a lot. I remember I also went to MTV's headquarters in New York at that time. For me, was like going to Disney World.
Yeah.
So there was always this kind of interest in being able to combine the love for business with the love for one of your passions, and really dedicate all of your energy to that. But sports just wasn't really an option then. But I do think that underlying interest in working in media and entertainment, creative, music, then found its way back.
So the first early in your career, there was a slight dabble in sport. You had a sports internship at Gillette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was it was my first internship, but it was my first sports related internship.
Yeah.
And the opportunity there was when my father worked for the Gillette company. This was the multinational company that I mentioned that he worked at for almost 30 years, and its headquarters was in Boston. I was doing my university at Boston University. In 1998, I was graduating. That was the year of the World Cup. So when I was going into my last semester, I said, you've got to connect me with people at headquarters, because I'm sure they need some temporary help leading up to the World Cup. And I'm there. I will work part-time at any time they need, just so I can get that experience. And that's how it came about. And I was able to do an internship of several months there in Boston, and then went to the World Cup in France and helped support a lot of the activities that they did at the World Cup. And it was amazing. No, it was an opportunity to combine work with a passion and to live it firsthand at that age.
Fantastic. So your big career chunk early on was based in consultancy. There are a few people in our business that have worked in consultancy. What skills does consultancy teach you that have ended up being applicable to your career so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think consulting is an amazing place to learn skills that can help in many different areas. Really, what consulting is really about is solving problems and solving different types of problems using an approach and a way of thinking and a skill set. And when you go anywhere in life, jobs or life in general, you are solving problems all the time. So consulting helps create this way of approaching new problems all the time by knowing how to think strategically, to know how to use numbers, to be comfortable analyzing decisions, coming up with options, of course, making final recommendations, even communicating effectively and convincing others of those things. So all of those are skills that can be useful in any career afterwards. So I think it's a great school. Plus, you've got all these aspects of needing to work under pressure, very tight timelines, very demanding clients, very high standards expected. So I think all those things create a way of working in you that you can take pretty much anywhere.
So after 13 years of consulting, you start work for Manchester City. Right after Mancini delivers the first Premier League title. That sounds exciting, but how do you go from consulting to working for a Premier League winning side?
Yeah,
how does that work?
Yeah, it's a long story, but what I would say is, it was probably part merit and part luck. The part merit goes back to a little bit of what I was saying is, consulting does allow you to be able to join many different sectors and be able to approach problems in a unique way. So I think that was the merit part of having had a good career in consulting. I had done the full path from analyst to partner. I had worked in the telecom, media, and tech practice, which is the closest you have in the consulting world to working in an entertainment-like sector. But then there was a lot of luck of speaking to the right person at the right time, who was joining a club that needed to make a lot of change and was going on a big kind of growth trajectory, which implied hiring a lot of new people. And that was the significant serendipity part of all this. I had the opportunity to speak with City Football Group's current CEO, Ferran Soriano, about 6 months before he took on the role as Man City CEO. He had actually worked in the same consulting firm I had. We had never worked together. We weren't friends by any means, had pretty much never met. But we had a lot of people in common, and he had done the career path from consulting to Football Club Barcelona. So he could understand how someone like me could play a role in what he was trying to build at Man City then. And that was the luck component.
I did not know that Ferran Soriano was a consultant. That has blown my mind. So you took on your role as Director of Marketing, Media, and Fan Development. Job roles are all very different across sport, but that sounds like an exciting role. What did it entail for you, like particularly the fan development front for an established club?
Yeah, I mean, I think these were areas that for Man City were all new. I mean, if you think about what Man City was then, this was a club that, of course, has a very, very long history. It was founded, over 125 years ago. But when I joined, as you said, it had just won its first Premier League. And I'd say on the pitch was now all of a sudden a challenger. And I wouldn't say it was established yet, but it was definitely a real competitor. And off the pitch was still trying to catch up. It wasn't one of the big football clubs and big brands of world football. And of course, a team of that size, definitely you needed to have, sponsorship people and ticketing people, and of course, sporting people, because you need that to operate the club almost like at a table stakes. But when you're not thinking of yourself as a global entertainment organization, you're not necessarily thinking about departments like marketing or like digital media or like fan relationship management or CRM. Those are functions that only become relevant when you look at the world in a very different way. And that was the moment in time for Man City. And I think that's where, looking at where I could play a role in a sports club at that time, since I didn't have a background in the sports and the more traditional sports functions, better to find someone that works in sports. For if you want a sponsorship guy or if you want a ticketing woman, and you can find those across other sports. But in these areas, it was a bit more kind of white space. No? How can we just find someone that understands marketing strategies and understands CRM strategies and understands digital strategies and can come here and just figure it out? Because I wouldn't say any sports club was particularly great at those functions. So there was a lot of just things to do and things to learn.
You had a successful career in consultancy, everything's going great, then you make the jump into sport. You never know what it's going to be like. You're probably thinking it's going to be great. Did it live up to expectations? Was it different? Like what did it feel like making that jump? Did you feel immediately at home because you were a big soccer fan, or was it like, wow, this is a little bit more unstructured than it is working at a consultancy?
Yeah. There were a lot of things that I learned in those first years. I would say overall, I can't be happier of the opportunity to work in sports and in soccer or football. I remember even before starting, but once I had accepted the new role, you start getting sent some stuff so you can start onboarding and seeing what's coming. And I remember one of the first Excel sheets I was sent, and I opened it, and it was a table of number of fans by country, by year, per big football club. So how many fans does Man United have, or Arsenal, or Man City, in different countries, in different years. And I said, wow, I'm used to working with a lot of Excel tables, but to be able to open an Excel table and find that sort of content on there was like, this is amazing. Now Excel tables are going to look like this. So to be able to combine that with something that you love just makes the job so much more fun. And there were so many pinch me moments, in my 10 years. So many moments when you're like, the first Premier League meeting that I remember going to. And you're sitting in order. All the clubs are sitting in order alphabetically. So I remember Man City, we had Man United on one side and Liverpool on the other side. No. And just that moment, you're like, wow, here we are at a Premier League meeting with all the different clubs represented and with these huge clubs right next to us. Of course, the first trophy win and celebrations and, trophy parade where you're walking next to the bus and seeing the just hundreds of thousands of people lining up in their faces. All those moments that are so emotional and so unique of working in sports were amazing. But what I would also say is that all those are very emotional and very fun. What has been really unique about this is that we've been able to also create at City Football Group this amazing business story. It wasn't just a opportunity to work in sports per se. It was an opportunity to work in the Premier League, in a growing football club that was going to try to disrupt and challenge the established order, that had a vision of establishing multiple clubs around the world, of investing in infrastructure and people. So being able to be a part of that incredible business transformation story is also one of the most exciting things of those last 10 years.
So I feel like the experiences that you had of early Manchester City, when you looked at the project that we have here, like challenger brand, like infrastructure, like helping to build something from scratch, was that part of the appeal that you've got experience doing that for Manchester City and those threads, some of them can pull through? Absolutely.
I would say that, this team, you guys have done a fantastic job already creating such strong foundations here. Independently of whether we would be winning or not on the pitch, which of course that has been incredible for, I bet, all of us or all of you guys to see, and of course the fans. But even if the team wasn't winning, I think winning on the pitch, I think what has been created here in terms of foundations is very strong. So in many ways, arriving here is a much more established first step or base than some of the clubs that I was working with, even Man City at the time. So I think you guys have done a great job. And my goal now is how can we build on that knowing that this is still the first year of this club's existence.
Your next job, you were promoted to an SVP of Media and Innovation, my world. So I'm excited to talk about this. And just anecdotally, I remember being in London advertising when you were in this role, and seeing a Premier League football club appear in advertising publications doing cool and innovative things. I remember people in advertising were going, "You see what Manchester City are doing? Isn't this is crazy? They're doing VR, they're doing chatbots. Like it was unusual." What ingredients did you have to pull together to make Manchester City one of the most innovative clubs? And and 100%, I know people. I'm sitting opposite the new president of the club here. Like, I think that is an objective analysis that Manchester City are still one of the most innovative clubs in the Premier League, and like you worked on that. What did you have to do and what were the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that innovation, while I had that word in my title, was not a role that was exclusively mine. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that make Man City be known as so innovative, because it isn't one person's job. It is everyone's job. And all of that starts top down. If the leader of the organization doesn't believe in innovation being important, then the rest of the organization won't follow. And the CEO of the group, Ferran, has real top-down belief that this is important. And that then creates an environment where people are encouraged to take risks and encouraged to look for new ways of doing things. And then there were some kind of big markers in the ground, like the investment in other clubs. That was a really early move, very innovative in the space then, of expanding internationally, not by taking Man City around the world, but by creating New York City FC back then, and taking Melbourne, a club in Melbourne, and acquiring it and making it become Melbourne City FC. That was a huge statement of innovation at the time. And then in all departments, you just kind of pick up on that as a vision, and you look for ways to be innovative yourself. In the media and digital teams that I led, we prided ourselves on being innovative, definitely in terms of content creation, in terms of using digital technology, and in terms of collaborations with others. That really drove energy in the team. But the entire organization was innovative, top to bottom.
In 2016, you said Manchester City are constantly exploring new ways to connect with our fans. In doing so, we proactively look to embrace innovative technologies that can help complement our physical touch points and strengthen our relationship with fans. Virtual reality, you were talking about in 2016. I know you did one of the first games. I think that was against Arsenal. The world of technology is getting more and more disparate, and more closed off. There's AI, there's crypto, NFTs. What's your view of this ecosystem, and how can clubs like City take advantage of new spaces? Yeah, I mean, the way we looked at that really was, again, going back to, we want to be innovative and we want to be risk-taking. That then comes with wanting to participate in those emerging technologies and emerging spaces, and get in early to learn, but with full understanding that many of those won't explode, or maybe won't even go anywhere. But it's almost part of the cultural way of working. Is we see something, we think it's got potential, we want to be part of the ecosystem that tries it out and learns. And the more you learn and the earlier you learn, the higher your chances of being successful if those things do materialize. So that's how we looked at it. We wanted to collaborate with as many of those third parties that were building innovative stuff in these different spaces. And of course, they also wanted to participate with big sports clubs, because we drive big audiences and allow them to get a lot of visibility also into the technology. So it was really a great win-win opportunities for us to experiment. Do you have a favorite risky bet that you took? Could have succeeded or could have failed. Is there one that you took and you thought, this was a good one? Yeah, I mean, I think that the VR one is interesting, because I remember at the time when we did it and I put on those goggles or glasses the first time, I was pretty impressed. And I thought, there's a lot of potential in this, and I could see that becoming much bigger than what it is today, really. We did, a live match in VR, and then we did some content in VR.
But that hasn't really taken off as I probably would have thought maybe 8 years ago when I did it first. Another one that for me was interesting was we did a few hackathons where we basically invited people to apply to come to Man City's offices and spend a weekend trying to create some new digital feature or digital app that could engage our fans around the world. And while I wouldn't say that those created an output per se, in terms of a feature that was developed in those 2 days, what it did create was some talent pipeline. And we hired some people even into the sporting kind of data world from those opportunities, where you just find these people that really love this space and are really talented. And that gives you an opportunity to get to know them and them get to know you. And an unexpected benefit comes from something like that.
The last 6 months have been like a lot. There's been a lot of manias, maybe in the last 2 years. Are there any technologies that you're like, I think that this could be the next frontier? Is there anything that you're paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's speaking about artificial intelligence now, and its ability to impact all sectors really in different ways. And I think that's definitely, I'd say, because of its breadth of how many different areas it can impact, that's the one that I'm most interested in seeing how it evolves, no? Because it can definitely impact the sporting side in using AI or models or more data to inform better recruiting decisions, of course, to help with injury prevention, even to help kind of tactics. So there's a lot of different applications of artificial intelligence on the sporting side, but then on the business side, you can use it to improve fan engagement, to improve a stadium experience, getting in and out. So I think artificial intelligence would be the one that when I think about technology that has a potential to have a big impact on the sport with a kind of 10 to 20 year horizon, that's definitely the one that I'm most interested in following. What I would say also, though, about something a bit more today, I think streaming, and especially Apple, is a real live case today of technology changing the way in which we consume day to day. And MLS having all of its matches available on Apple on one stop all around the world, one platform, and the potential that has to change behaviors, but then to start connecting with other aspects of the Apple ecosystem are really interesting, and more of something that we'll see happen in the next year, 2, 3 years, rather than artificial intelligence, which of course is a longer impact horizon.
Sports clubs, particularly soccer clubs, seem to be hot properties at the moment all around the world. We've just seen Tom Brady enter with Birmingham. We've seen actors buying Wrexham. Everybody's trying to seek to differentiate themselves. Do you think differentiating yourselves off the pitch is an important part of your role moving forward? And does it attract viewership for the actual on the pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical. I think more and more, to build a sustainable, long-term focused sports team, you have to have the ability to differentiate and to represent something and to have an identity, really. And I think that is where St. Louis City has done a fantastic job, but it's really about trying to identify what you represent and what you're about. And I think the clubs that are able to do that well are those that think about the city that they represent and what's the history of the city and the DNA of the people, and then try to elevate that and use the sport and the team to represent those pillars or those values. And St. Louis, I've heard a lot about the grit in the city and this kind of underdog kind of view and huge pride in the region, even this kind of soccer capital of the U.S. It's about capturing all of those different themes and then representing it on the pitch, representing it in the stands, representing it in community activities, and that will allow fans to connect with it at a much deeper level than just a team that's either winning or losing. It's not just that; it's about your identity and your city.
So we're moving on to like the final part of your role at Manchester City before we talk about St. Louis City in a little bit more detail. But your final job was a really interesting one. You're managing director of EU LATAM partner clubs. So you looked after clubs in Spain, France, Italy, Belgium, Uruguay, Brazil, Bolivia, and Japan. That seems like a really cool job. Multi-club strategies are like a fairly new invention in the world of sport, but Manchester City sat at the heart of like developing this. Could you explain a little bit about what a multi-club strategy is and what that role entailed?
Yeah. I mean, I think the genesis of a multi-club strategy starts from a really basic central concept, which is any organization that is good at something, if they then want to expand, it's about how do you take that expertise to other markets and grow internationally. I think the thing that was innovative about it is that rather than doing that by taking your English club and trying to make it relevant internationally, the question or the approach that was followed by City Football Group organization was to actually create new football clubs across the world or acquire football clubs across the world. That was unique about this multi-club organization. But it's really just taking, if you know how to win games, play the sport, and all the different things that come with that. If you know how to build fan bases and get people to come to stadiums, if you know how to create a financially sustainable football club, why not take that expertise and try to do a football club in other markets where you think that the potential for a football club exists?
So it's like taking the IP of success and like almost franchising it out in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a franchise model per se, because it's not that structured and that kind of this is how you need to set up a new restaurant. It's not that
cookie cutter.
It's not that cookie cutter, but there's a lot of similarities and a lot of expertise that you can translate from one market to the next, and that's what we try to do with this multi-club approach.
Working with that many clubs sounds like a challenging job. Like, how do you get your head around all of the different personalities, all of the different front offices, all of the different sporting departments? Like, is that a skill that you learn quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think the consulting aspect helps because you are thrown into different countries, different problems, different companies, different cultures all the time. And this is what this was. One day you're working on a problem in Japan, the other day you're working on a problem in Bolivia. And I wouldn't say there's a lot of things in common between people from Japan and Bolivia, but you have to be able to work effectively and drive impact in all those different contexts. I'd say that the opportunity to work across all those different markets was incredibly enriching because it just gives you so much more exposure to experiences. You're just kind of like learning at scale. No, you're what you would experience in, say, I did this role for 5 years. If I did that role just with one club, I would have 5 seasons of experiences. And say working with, a total of 60 players over those 5 years and maybe 1 or 2 head coaches. Now, if you take that, but then replicate 8 clubs on top of those 5 years, all of a sudden your experiences and your exposure to different problems is multiplied. And that helps to then be able to address the next problem in a better way. But yeah, in the end, what you end up doing, you're obviously not able to be at a very detailed level operationally with all those clubs. All those clubs were run by a local CEO, a local sporting director that was there on a day-to-day basis. My role was to provide some direction and prioritization from the center, of course, to find those moments where I had to be more on the ground and more present, especially when a club isn't doing well, especially when a club is new and they need to understand how we work and what things we value. And those are the moments where I would be more involved or on big projects, a big impactful investment or decision. And you just kind of find a way to gradually spread your time and focus on those clubs that need more help or those decisions that need more oversight.
When you worked in Belgium, you were in the press and you were talking about the sort of sporting vision of what the club was going to be. And you spoke about the development of young players, and you were very honest about, where that market was, what would work for that market. But it felt like it was a very tailored approach based on market realities. Is that something that are those experiences that you've had at lots of different clubs? So when you come into St. Louis, you're looking like the market, the culture, and what's going on, and are you starting to formulate sort of, where the vision goes for here?
Yeah, I think I know that when this club was created, there was that vision of why do we want to do this, and I think that's the same case as it was in Belgium when we looked at and invested in this club in a small city on the frontier with Holland almost, and we thought about what do we want to do with this club? Does it fit? How can we add value to it? Will the fans welcome us? And the opportunity that we found there was to take this club and bring it back to better days. It had gone through some challenging years of underinvestment, and we thought that we could come in and help drive investment into that team again, and at the same time do that in a way that we are able to benefit from some of the huge opportunities that Belgium as a country provides. And it's a country of 10 million people, small country also, not as small as Uruguay, but similar story, that with a country of 10 million people, they're able to create amazing football players. No? So there we were going also to learn and to be present in a key market, knowing that had to be an important strategic pillar of how we were going to drive value from being at that club.
When you're kind of speed running experiences, all of these different clubs, do you start to develop is there like a set of Diego principles that when you go into a club, there are certain sort of non-negotiable things that you do at every club as you're looking to like develop and move it forward?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some, I would say, ways in which we approached all those different clubs consistently as a way of working for City Football Group. So there's certain standards that a City Football Group club needed to live up to. That doesn't mean that all clubs have to be winning their leagues and need to be competing in Champions League equivalents. But we need to have strategies. We need to be implementing and executing to meet those targets that we set. And we need to do that in a way that is working as part of the collective and helping the club, but also the group. Of course, all the clubs, there are non-negotiables around the roots of the club, the importance to the local community, the fan base, being authentic. We know that football clubs are extremely important to a lot of people. And that is a non-negotiable for sure when we're going to any of those clubs. That is always something that we're very aware of, and that we need to make sure that we can uphold that when we look at fans in the eye, and we can tell the story that we have helped be good custodians of that club and helped invest in and grow those clubs.
You worked in some countries with extremely intense fan bases, and you've mentioned before that you haven't always gone into clubs that are succeeding. You've had to invest, you've had to improve. How important is connection to local fan bases for you? And like, do you have any examples of turnaround jobs that you've done on disgruntled folk?
Yeah, we've definitely been, at City Football Group, there are several clubs that I would say that we joined that have relatively small fan bases. Montevideo would be the best example for that. But then we decided to embark on projects with clubs with huge fan bases, like Palermo in Italy, in Sicily, or Bahia in the northeast of Brazil. These are clubs that have huge fan bases and many, many years of existence. And that comes with a whole other level of responsibility to those fans. It's also true that there are moments where we have had some difficult moments with fans, where, of course, fans see City Football Group coming, and they have big expectations of immediate results and turnaround. And this is sport, and sport doesn't usually produce immediate results. Even Man City, as a story, took that club 10 years to really start showing up and competing well. sustained investment and good decision making to get them to now 10 years after that be winning a Champions League. So it takes some time to get all those things working in the right way. And if I think about the Palermo example is interesting because we invested in that club, acquired that club right after the club got promoted from third division to second division. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Palermo has a lot of history in first division, very big fan base, but went through a period of some financial mismanagement, and the team basically went bankrupt and started again from amateur football and got promoted from fourth tier to third tier. Then we joined to help do the rest of the journey from third division to, for sure, first division at some point. So we joined right after the team had got promoted from third division to second division in June. All the fans were very excited with the promotion. And then within a month, the head coach and the sporting director resigned right in the middle of the preseason. And of course, we'd been creating a squad working with those individuals. So that created a bit of a curveball. And then, of course, we hired a new head coach. And the first 8, 9, 10 matches, we found ourselves towards the bottom of second division in relegation spots. So, fans weren't happy. Media wasn't happy. There was a lot of pressure, and so much pressure that the way in which that pressure is typically managed in a country like Italy or in countries like Brazil or Spain is that at that moment, the managers get fired. That's how the culture is and what people expect, even staff. And our role was to say, that's not how we operate. We're operating as long-term operators of football clubs. We don't want to be swayed by short-term results. If we're seeing the right things, then we stay with our decisions and we give them time. At that moment, it was a difficult decision to take. The easiest path out to just be focusing on keeping fans happy would have been to change the manager, but we thought that wasn't the right decision for the medium term and for the long term. And over time, the team improved. The team finished in 9th place, I think it was, just missed promotion playoffs on goal difference, and we were about a mid-table spending team. So completely met and slightly exceeded expectations at the end of the season when you had more time.
So, having worked with a lot of different fan bases, winning is obviously going to make everybody happy, but you can't always win, as you've said. What do you think makes fans happy around the world? Like, having seen lots of different cultures, I know as an Arsenal fan, what makes me happy outside of winning. Are there like commonalities that you see across the world?
Yeah, I think winning, as you said, is definitely what fans care about the most. But I think that fans also like to see growth. So like a trajectory of, all right, I see that we are improving year on year. I also think that fans like to see committed owners that are investing. And by investing, I don't mean necessarily investing in talent only, but also investing in infrastructure, doing things for the right reasons, being responsible kind of citizens of the community, connecting with fans. I think fans like seeing that the owner of the club or the owners of the clubs are taking their club seriously and leaving a legacy. And I also think that they like feeling represented by the football clubs and by the values even of the players when they speak, or when they play the games. They like to feel represented. I'm sure that fans would love to see all 11 players come from the city that they're in. I think the days of that have definitely passed. But you want to see some examples of talent coming up and having the opportunity to get minutes in that first team, as St. Louis City has also shown this season. So yeah, I think all those things matter. I would say by far and away the most important things is to win, but our role as a club is to be able to make sure that winning is defined in more ways. It's not just about winning on the pitch every weekend. It's about winning in the community, winning with fans, winning in leaving legacies for the city, and all those things need to matter as well.
So just wanted to dive a little bit into one story because we spoke about it, but you were elected to the board of directors at Girona in 2017. You retained a role as vice president. I feel like this is a story that you're particularly proud of. Could you tell us a little bit about that project in Spain?
Yeah. So Girona is a city in the northeast of Spain, in the region of Catalonia. It is about an hour drive north of Barcelona, smallish city, but not super small. It's maybe about 100,000 population, but a beautiful, beautiful area of the world, really. And it's a club that has been around for close to 100 years, but had never before made it to First Division. When we decided to invest in that club, it had been competing at the top of Second Division, and we thought that we could help it get to First Division. And that same year, when we were closing the transaction, the club managed to get into First Division. So we joined the summer right after that promotion. And the story of that club is really special because I was able to see firsthand how much that club's relevance grew in these last 5 years. You speak to I traveled a lot there, especially at the beginning. And you could see how in the city of Girona, when you'd walk around, people would be wearing Barcelona shirts because that was the club that everyone looked up to. It was an hour away. It was from the same region. Obviously, it was a big club. And you go now and you see probably 5 Girona shirts for every 1 Barcelona shirt. And the city has really fallen in love with its team and realized that that's their team. It's not Barcelona anymore. And you see kids wearing it, and you just see how much it has changed even in 5 years. So yeah, that has been a really special project to work on. And I would also say another thing that made it special was the journey in those 5 years, because Girona had moments of suffering. Girona got promoted to First Division, had an incredible first year, but then the second year they got relegated. We were in a very comfortable position halfway through the season, and then of the last 10 games, the team lost 9, and they got relegated the last day of the season. Really, really difficult moment. And then they spent 2 years making it to the promotion playoff final with the return leg at home and losing in front of our fans 2 years in a row. So those were 3 years of heartbreak, emotional heartbreak for fans, for staff, for players, but also financially really difficult for the club that needed to stick within the regulations of the league that don't allow you to just lose money. You need to reset your cost base. So went through 3 years of consecutive heartbreaks, as I was saying. And, gladly, then we managed to get the team promoted again. The third year in Second Division, again, with the promotion playoff final, this time away, and had an amazing year in First Division again. We finished in 10th place, just a few points off European qualification. So yeah, what made that project so special wasn't just to see how the community kind of fell in love with its team, but also to have been able to be a part of these difficult moments, which we're able to work through together and come back to a great moment for the club.
Did you enjoy working for Manchester City is huge, and all Premier League clubs are huge, even the small ones. Mm-hmm. Working for a club of that size, is there something different about the intimacy of working in those moments and sort of sharing the high highs and the low lows?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that obviously the smaller the club, the more familiar they feel, and the more that it is a real family environment. So yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's move on to City SC. How does it feel to begin the new chapter?
It feels really good, really energizing to be here. There's so much positive energy around the city, around the stadium when we come to the games, obviously around the organization and the staff. And it's it's a new club, a challenger again, as we said before, and there's so much still to do. So very, very energizing, very exciting for the club and also for the league.
So you're president and general manager. What parts of the club are you looking after?
Yeah, my role is to look after all areas of the club, the business side and the sporting side. Of course, I will report into Carolyn. She's the CEO of the club, and into the board of directors, which Carolyn is also a member of. And my role will be to help on day-to-day operations of the football club. That's what I'm brought here to do.
So your role does include looking after sporting matters?
Yes, it does involve business and sporting. and therefore, Lutz will report into me in the same way as the other parts of the organization. But I would also clarify that in the same way of any people that report into me, these are really talented people, really experienced, that I am more than happy to delegate to and to let all of those people, you included, take those departments and figure out the strategies and make recommendations, make most decisions without needing me to get involved at all. Everyone's doing a fantastic job. Lutz, for sure. Everyone can see the squad that he's been able to pull together, Bradley's work, and giving him a shot at being head coach. The results are amazing. I will work with Lutz in the same way that I will work with others.
So you won't be dialing in substitutes from the bench. That's not part of it.
No. If you ever see me on a phone call during a game, that's not what I'll be doing for sure. I think my idea is when there's a major decision that needs to get taken, or a big problem in any of the departments, that's when all the department leads will say, hey, I think we got to involve Diego, speak about this, and make sure that we're taking the right decision. That's how I work with Lutz.
Is it nice coming into a club and that's not in distress, and coming into a club and it's doing well on the sporting side? I mean, like, great chance of playoffs this year, like good vibes around the training ground. Has that been a breath of fresh air for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when I chose to come here, that was not by any means the expectation. I chose to join this project before the season started and before seeing the results that we're seeing now on the pitch. Of course, there were still a lot of positive signals about how many things had been done well here. The most obvious and most patent is the stadium build and the training ground, but there was a lot of signals around season ticket deposits and merchandise sales where you could sense that there was going to be an amazing reception of the team here. But yeah, of course it's great to arrive here where things are going so well. And my role there has to be one to sit back a little bit and let things continue evolving. What I would say is it also creates a little bit of difficulty when it comes to wanting to arrive and find those quick wins, but also manage expectations. No, because if we're able to be in the first position of the Western Conference in our first year with the second to lowest wage bill of the league, why not keep this going forever? No, and you and I know that it's really exceptional what the team is doing. And for that to happen and come together the first year can create some either kind of visible or subtle expectations among fans, among press, even among staff. And I think we all need to recognize and enjoy this moment, but we need to be thinking about the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years. How do we make this sustainable as a football club, as a business, as a sporting organization?
How would you describe your leadership style? And we've got hints through the last hour of conversation, but do you have a specific way that you like to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to be ambitious, and I like to have a big vision, work to high standards, win. So all those I would capture under this desire to be ambitious. I love creating an innovative, risk-taking culture. I think that makes people come to work happier. And then I recognize that I like building personal relationships with the people that I work with because that just makes job more fun. So I want to be a good leader, but especially a good partner and a good support person to anyone in the organization, and create that culture of a family amongst the team.
One of the first things that you asked me was when is the next supporter meeting, and you made it a point to come to a supporter commission meeting and to present to them, and you also spent some time at the Santos party. They pulled out a margarita. How important are your relationships with the supporters, and are you going to be an accessible president for our fan base?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is you can see because how much I love the sport, that I am a fan also. And if I could choose, I would be sitting in the supporter section at every game, because that's how I most enjoy watching football. In England, my best matches were going amongst the away fans. To some of the with the visiting fans and the traveling fans, those are the environments that I really enjoy the most. So because of that, I also want to get to know the fans and connect with them. And I think in the first 100 days or so, one of the priorities for me is to get out there and to meet as many of the people, of course, in the organization, but also outside of the organization. And fans is a really important part of that. Not just fans. I also obviously want to meet other club presidents and CEOs. I want to go spend more time with the league. I want to spend time with Adidas, Apple, other key stakeholders, our sponsors. We spend some time with journalists and the press. So there's a lot of different people around the club that I also want to go out there and meet, introduce myself to, and make them realize that they matter to us, because they do. And a way to demonstrate that is to go and introduce myself as one of the important priorities in the first 100 days.
Have there been any surprises, like early on, either with the city or just things that you've seen that you're like, oh wow, this is cool?
Yeah, I would say there was a lot of surprises. As I said, from the kind of interviewing stage, there was just almost like a surprise after another of good news and unexpected findings. But if I had to pick one, I would probably say the stadium atmosphere. Coming to the games here and seeing a completely packed stadium, beautiful stadium, super well integrated into the city. So many people wearing St. Louis City kit at the games. Flags, drums, chants, that fan culture, to see that with a few months of the club's life is pretty spectacular.
That's so cool. Are there any projects that you're excited to? I mean, I know you've only been a short amount of time, but are there any things where you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the league-wide opportunities are really interesting, because there is really a moment in time now between now and the World Cup where so many things are coming together, and we need to think about how we can work together as the different clubs in the league, and making sure that these years are maximized for the impact of soccer and football in the U.S. So I think that overall project, multi-year project between now and say World Cup 2020-26, is a fascinating project with real kind of high impact potential. That at a league level, and then at a club level, I'd say there's I'm picking up a lot of different interesting projects. We've been speaking about some more video content that we can do with your team. Obviously, I know how important it is to try to develop some young talent from the St. Louis region. Would love to get more stuck into how we're doing that through the academy. I know how important the female-led organization is here, and how can we dial up the importance of that and look for other initiatives we can do. So yeah, there's a lot of different projects that I'm delighted to find an opportunity to get stuck in.
And Lionel Messi is in the league. Your fellow countryman. You've seen him lift a World Cup. He's pulling up trees at Miami at the moment. Do you think there is an opportunity for other clubs in the league to capitalize on the heat that he's bringing to viewerships and shirt sales across the league?
Yeah, I mean, to have the opportunity of Messi, one of the best players in the history of the sport, maybe the best player, to be finishing his career in the U.S. and in the MLS is an incredible opportunity that we all need to find a way to grow with. You can already see it from the first few games that he's had, the amount of exposure that his goals, they've gone around the world. And even Inter Miami shirts have appeared all over the place. I was in Europe just a few weeks ago, bringing my family back here, and I was impressed to see Inter Miami shirts in Spain.
Wow.
Never would have expected to see that, and that's happened in a month. So I think the opportunity for Inter Miami, of course, is great, but I care about the opportunity for St. Louis City. And what matters there is how that audience or that interest in the MLS can then be converted into real lasting interest into the league, not just from fans, actually, primarily from fans, because that's what's going to drive long-term success, but getting players also to want to come here and play in this league, more players, even getting more brands and sponsors wanting to participate in the league. So it's just, there's so many more eyeballs now on the MLS, including in St. Louis City. And it's an opportunity that we can't waste. So
2023 has 4.5 months left. Do you have any personal success goals, or what does success look like for you in the short term?
Yeah, I mean, I think that success for me, firstly, is success for the team, and I would love the team to finish the season on a high, because I think it deserves it. I think the players deserve it. I think the staff deserve it. The owners deserve it. The fans deserve it. And that would make me incredibly happy. I won't claim to have had pretty much any role in that success, but I think everyone deserves it. So that would be a huge sense of success for me personally. And then, of course, my own definitions of success come through becoming a bit more integrated into the organization, getting to know more people, settling in, earning people's trust, and that I can help, starting to add value, and of course making sure that my family is well settled. And if we can achieve those things this year, that'll be an amazing 2023.
Fantastic. We have a little tradition on this show that we end with a message to the fans. Do you have a little message that you'd like to share for the fans, because they're all listening?
I think fans know this, but the key message for me would be to not overlook this opportunity as a moment in time where this will become history for the city, for the people here, where people will want to remember this and say, I was there. I was there that first season, or those first 3, 4, 5 years of existence of a sports team in my city. It's really unique, and it's very, very filled with emotions, win or lose. So just invite anyone who hasn't yet had an opportunity to connect with this club to not miss out on the opportunity to do so in its first years of life. Fantastic. Well, that brings us to the end of the City Voice podcast. Diego, that was brilliant. Thank you for giving us so much of your time and so much insight into where you've been and where you want to go. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, give us a 5-star review. Leave a nice message and ask Diego to come back at the start of next season, and maybe he will. But Diego, thank you very much for your time. That was brilliant. Thanks, Pete. Ciao for now.